Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about the growing threat for this potential large winter storm that could be occurring across the eastern portion of the United States as we push into the holiday kind of week, and especially around the days of Thanksgiving. We could see this storm intensify and obviously create a lot of impact because of how busy traveling is occurring during the time frame that the system will be unfortunately most likely developing. So that's a bit unfortunate. It's going to be a very interesting system, and again, there is still a lot of disagreement amongst the models. We have the GFS that is completely not really showing anything, not really any significant system, and then we have the European model and its relative ensembles showing a very large potent system that's completely opposite of what the GFS shows. So yeah, there's still a lot of concerns with that, but the European does have kind of support from the Canadian in terms of that storm system. So right now I'm leaning towards a European type scenario. Maybe not as impressive as what the European is currently showing, but it seems less likely that what the GFS is showing will actually come out and play out. So let me just show you that, because I'm doing a lot of talking without showing you this. So let's start off by looking at the GFS model. Again, this is the model that does not show this system really whatsoever. And again, this is still a little bit out. So right now we don't really have any signs of this system right yet. You can see it's we have that obviously that extremely bitter cold air across a good portion of the United States. Incredible. I mean, right now here in my area it's 22 degrees. The average high for this time of the year should be 47 here. It was 27 here. So yeah, 20 degrees below average. Tonight could get down to 11 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just really even cold for January, let alone mid-November. So yeah, it's a historic cold. And again, that's the cold that swept over the lakes and caused that lake effect across, those historic amounts of up to over 70, 80 inches, I think, was the highest reported there, and it's still going on, so ridiculous. But yeah, that will get kind of kicked out. Notice the high pressure starts kind of getting activated. It's weak, but it's slowly pumping warmer air in here, more moist air, and a lot of this cold, dry air lifts out of here. Now notice that the Gulf of Mexico is kind of pretty rich with a lot of moisture. There's a lot of thunderstorm activity going on, so the moisture is definitely there, but we need something to kind of pick this up, and that comes from the northwest. Notice we have a system that moves into the northwest, British Columbia, or late Tuesday, early Wednesday. This thing's pretty quick moving. Notice it moves out into the plains. Doesn't develop into any massive system. Notice that a lot of the moisture that was previously hanging on does kind of get kicked out with this low pressure, but there's still plenty available here, so that doesn't really impact our kind of reservoir of moisture for this little system to pick up. And notice there's cold air behind it, so there's a lot of features here that are supportive of this. But you can see that the GFS, this low pressure, is just a bit too weak. It is further towards the south, but it just doesn't really pick up any of this moisture. It does a bit. You can see it starts creating some thunderstorms, maybe attach itself toward this cold front way up from this clipper here, but really nothing of significance. And again, a scenario like this would not even be indicative of any big storm. And you're looking at this, and if you just had the GFS model to analyze, you would think, okay, maybe some sort of precip activity across the holiday weekend here, nothing too big. So again, the contrast from these two models that I'll show you in just a second couldn't be greater. And you can see the GFS continues showing again, not a too warm of a pattern for the eastern United States. A little bit that cooler makes its way across the east and southeastern Canada there. A little bit of moisture hanging around the south and southwest, maybe causing some snow there across the higher elevations, and very warm across the west. You can see that the temperature anomalies here would be, again, pretty impressive. That could later on again move out into the Midwest, so creating a warmer time period. Compared to at least what we're seeing now. So the GFS again really doesn't show anything. Now let me show you the comparison to the European model. And again, such disagreement is usually just kind of uncomfortable because of which model is right. What should I say to you guys? We don't have a guarantee of which model is going to have its scenario play out, or maybe it's neither. Maybe they're both wrong. So that's always a possibility as well. So notice that cold air, the European shows it as well. It gets moved out of here, and again, we have that moisture across the Gulf of Mexico. We have that high pressure, so it moves a lot of this cold air out of here relatively quickly. And then we have that little system from the northwest, right, that moves its way into Washington and British Columbia on Monday into Tuesday. This thing quickly scatters across Montana and into southern Canada, and you can see that the European keeps it a bit stronger. You can see that it's a bit more, there's a cold front, more defined system. It's a bit stronger, so and even though it's further north, it's still capable enough to pick up some of this moisture. It attaches itself to this little trough in a jet stream, a little vortice max and that obviously is going to provide it with a little bit of boost of energy. So notice it produces some snow from Minnesota into Wisconsin, and it starts dragging up some moisture. However, that's not the main area of circulation the system develops from. But what it does do, crucially, is it brings up a lot of this moisture from its kind of cold front, with its cold front. So it drags a lot of this up here, and that allows for future potential cyclone development further east. And this is what I mean. Look, so we start seeing a really big surge of moisture right up the northeast seaboard. Again, the lack of cold air here will cause a lot of this moisture to be as rain for the eastern seaboard. Notice some snow though into Iowa, potentially into Wisconsin. Again, nothing too significant. Maybe some ice and some, again, pretty chilly air for November standards. So that could be definitely something that is something to watch for. But notice a lot of this moisture. So this is already completely different from what the GFS was showing, right? The GFS showed a huge disconnect between the northern piece and the southern piece of this. The European, nope, it shows that moisture getting picked up from that little low pressure and it's getting tossed up into that cold air, which eventually will transition into snow. Again, though, notice for the most part in Pennsylvania, upstate New York, or sorry, even just New York, upstate New York as well, into southern Canada, it's mainly a rain event. However, it eventually needs some of that cold air. So, for some of the cities like Montreal, Quebec, this could be it potentially, maybe even Ottawa, and eventually maybe even Toronto. This could be a very big snow event. And I do have Canadian viewers as well, so, just because this isn't impacting maybe the United States with snow doesn't mean, I'm not going to talk about it. And obviously it's impacting the United States with potentially, ice you can see back here, but also just that rain. It's going to be pretty significant if this were to occur. And again, this could still alter. The European, if this one is right, then that's still half the battle, because there's a lot of European models that show a system like this forming, but there's just some differences. Some show it more off coast, so it develops snow maybe further inland, or closer towards maybe the U.S.-Canadian border. Some even develop a snowstorm just off the east coast, classic nor'easter. So again, that's something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on for. But again, very strong winds, so again, probably some lake effect down the winds of Lake Huron, Lake Michigan. You can see marginally cold air, so a lot of this will be kind of a slushy mix. But again, some of this rain up here, especially into Canada, could transition over into some very, very heavy snow, maybe a big icing event again, potentially brewing up for portions of the New England area there and into southern Canada. So there's a lot of risks with this, and again, very, very, very heavy snowfall rates with this, and of course a lot of rain. And it does bring in a pretty good shot of cooled air behind this. And obviously where the heavy lake effect snow fell across Erie and upstate New York, if this were to come true, this would be kind of a nightmare because of all this rain that would be falling on top of all that snow, 70 plus inches. That would definitely be causing potentially some flood concerns. And notice that after that, the European kind of still kicks out the cold air relatively quickly. It doesn't linger for too long, and we see potentially more of the Pacific pattern, zonal flow, kind of open up. So that's definitely something we will have to be watching for in the future development. But let's go back and take a look at some of this precipitation that this system leaves behind with its footprint. Again, rather significant. Not too much further across the Midwest. Again, what it leaves across the Northwest isn't also too significant, but what it does here with all that moisture that it picks up and throws, especially into southern Canada and the Northeast, New England, really even to the Mid-Atlantic, could be quite significant. You could see amounts of anywhere from 1 to 2, maybe even 3 inches of precipitation in the form of rain or snow there, because if I show you the total snowfall, you could see a lot of areas across southern Canada where it could be picking up a lot of snow here, 25 inches. So cities like Toronto, you're right on the cusp between maybe getting some of that snow, but then further cities up along here, across this border here, will be picking up a lot more. Quebec, Ottawa, Montreal, much more in the risk for some of this heavier snowfall, and even portions of Maine, upper New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, depending on the exact track of this. And when you compare this to something like the GFS, it's a stark, complete difference. And the GFS, this was at noon. This is the most recent one. You can see it's been kind of consistent with that as well. But then the European has also been consistent with its version of the story. You can see heavy snow yesterday, and in fact, over the most recent model runs showing even more snow than what it showed yesterday. So this is what it showed yesterday at noon. So 24 hours ago, you can see also kind of a different story. This was what it showed yesterday, or on Friday, Thursday at noon now. So yeah, a lot of decently consistent forecasts from the European there, and both from the GFS. So it doesn't really help that much when trying to decipher which one's accurate. Looking at the Canadian, so this is kind of one I third one I often look at just to see, if again, like the tiebreaker, if you will. You can see it's definitely more of a heavier snow event than GFS. Maybe not as heavy as what the European is showing. I was showing you the wrong model run, actually, not the most recent one. So let's just see the most recent one, and you can see it does show quite a bit. Again, yeah, more amounts that are comparable to what the the European is showing. So as I play this out, notice that it shows that little system right here, that moisture across the Gulf. Initially, maybe some activity across the Midwest, so that little plummet of cold air, kind of this pocket getting pretty much closed off from the rest of the jet stream flow, and then there's that big system that rides up again. A lot of moisture, potentially a lot of snow. That could definitely be something that we will be watching for. So yeah, it's still a little bit far out, to say the least, 150 plus hours out. But yeah, we're definitely getting closer, and you know, the models could start agreeing. That would be pretty nice. You know, it would help a lot. Let's take a look at a UK model. So this is from England. It only goes out to 144 hours, so really not that far out. And I don't believe it has a precipitation kind of simulation type thing. So I guess we could just look at the total precip and judge based off that. So it shows some activity up here. Still too far out though. It doesn't take us far out enough to judge what's going on further there. Yeah, it doesn't go out far enough, unfortunately. What we could do is look at some of the ensembles. So these are the European. So this is, again, the family that kind of is more supportive of a storm system occurring, if you will. And you can see that, sorry about that, a lot of them do show that system indeed. Some obviously a lot differently than others. You can see this one takes a little bit longer for this system to kind of, I guess, combine itself, but you can see it produces, again, very heavy snow amounts into potentially New England, even as this wraps around to the US, especially obviously into Canada. And then if you look at, I mean, there's 50 different versions here, so obviously I won't show you all of them. You can see this one is more of a northern track, more quick, develops and strengthens a little bit further out, so not as maybe impactful. This one, again, kind of more classic towards what I was showing you earlier, shows a lot more precipitation, very heavy snowfall rates, incredible system, and then that blows away. And there are still some models amongst this family that, you know, you can see this one takes it more closer to the shore, maybe more of an inland, or maybe not as far away from the ocean here, the heavy snowfall event. So, and there's still some, again, as I was saying, that don't really show the system occurring, kind of like what the GFS models were showing. And then, of course, there are some GFS models that show a system more of what the European ensembles are showing. So you can see there's one that you can see takes a more coastal kind of track with this. So there's still a fair amount of disagreement. But if you were to take a look at the average look from all the European ensembles, so all of them combined now, the 51s overlaid on top of each other in terms of the snowfall, you can see that there is a clear explosion of snow right around this time frame. So for the majority, the average snowfall that they're predicting is, you know, well over a foot across some of these areas in Canada and into the US. So obviously some are in this vicinity. Not really too accurate for now, but that's definitely there. And if I were to show you for the past several days, there's been more of a kind of, I guess, agreement trend, because see, this is what it showed yesterday. So not as robust of a, you know, I guess, increase in snow, meaning that there's probably more disagreement. Yesterday at noon, this is what it showed. You can see definitely starting to, you know, obviously show a clear potential system there based off the rapid explosion or expansion of the snowpack. And again, this is the one that came out yesterday at midnight, even more aggressive, and then today's. So you can see that the Europeans are becoming probably more and more confident with this, and you could expect that if a scenario like this were to come true, then, you know, there would be some amounts that are well into the almost 2-foot range there. From the GFS ensemble, so these are, you know, again, the different family, the one that's not really as, doesn't really show this system in the same way that the European system or models do. And again, let's take a look at the average look from this, and you can see that there is some sort of an increase of snow here, but it's really more limited, and it's still not as, I guess, consistent as what maybe the European models are showing. You can see for the past few days it's been kind of doing that, no real increase or decrease. So I'm leaning towards the European model scenario, but definitely, you know, a scenario of the two kind of combining. You know, maybe the GFS is underestimating this total, maybe the European models are overestimating it. It'll be kind of something in between. Maybe it's going to be something even stronger than what the European model is showing. Again, a lot of speculation that kind of has to be, I guess, become concrete in evidence, because for now, again, it's anyone's guess. I can show you a German model. So this is another model that I sometimes look at, and you can see that it shows that system, though it stays further towards the north, it does end up dragging some of this moisture from the south and develops some sort of a system here. Not really a snowstorm, but more of a rainmaker for the northeast. Still more significant. Eventually, you can see it does produce a lot of snow further up north where it meets that cold air. Still more significant than what the GFS is showing, but obviously not as significant as what the European was showing at its respective ensembles. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot more, a lot more waiting, and I guess seeing what the model data has to show. That needs to be done because yeah, for now I really can't tell you guys precisely whether or not this thing, what model has the best handle on this. I do want to say though that the chances for a scenario where it's just completely kind of nothing like what the operational GFS showed us is not as likely as what the European is, because the European models are showing that, and the Canadian kind of agrees with the European. And usually when those two agree with each other, the GFS is usually the one. We've had that scenario several times last year, and I remember I think it was most of the time the European and Canadian were the ones that were the favored, or ended up becoming true, as opposed to the GFS when it's the outlier. So I just want to go back to the GFS models, but show you them individually, and just to show you that it's not all they don't all show the same thing. So yeah, let's take a look at the Northeast United States snowfall ensemble. Again, it's a little bit small, but you can see that obviously around this time frame. So Friday, Saturday, right here, you can see there's obviously some differences. Some don't really, like these three right here, don't really add any snow at all, and there's some that add quite a bit more. But again, still, none of them are really as excited about this as maybe the European. But you can see there's some that maybe include some sort of a coastal storm there. So there's obviously disagreement. And later on, the pattern also looks to be very, very active. And that could be also maybe more across the Midwest as we start seeing that Pacific moisture coming into the United States. So that's something to watch for as well. And you can see for the most part, the next few 100 hours look pretty dry for the Midwest in terms of activity, but then you can see right here we start seeing a flurry of colors being added, so different model interpretations, but overall it seems that the pattern may be kicking up in activity as we go on into the future. Alright, that's basically it though, guys, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.